Ibrahim Traoré myths debunked. You've heard the rumors that Ibrahim Traoré rejected 200 mosques. In this video, I'm gonna debunk the 3 biggest lies about Ibrahim Traoré with hard proof. So you need to stay till the end because what I found, it even shocked me. So myth number 1 is that Ibrahim Traoré rejected Saudi Arabia's offer to build 200 mosques. So one of the most viral rumors about Ibrahim Traoré, especially in homemade YouTube videos and amateur Instagram posts, is that he rejected an offer of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to build 200 mosques in Burkina Faso. And this story is repeated everywhere, from Uganda to Sri Lanka to Nigeria, and it was even commented in the comments of my previous video as supposedly like proof that Ibrahim Traoré is not a Muslim anymore, or that he converted to Christianity. And so we're gonna get into that a little bit later, but here's the truth. Like, it literally took me 5 minutes online to find out that this story is fake. It's pushed by a media outlet known for sensational headings with little sources, a Nigerian TV outlet. And what's important is that Saudi Arabia's cooperation with Burkina Faso is fully documented on the official website of Saudi, and there is no report of 200 mosques being offered to built for Burkina Faso. And so like the things they have done, however, is like medical treatments for conjoined twins. They have hosted anti-extremism workshops. They funded infrastructure and trade corridors in Burkina Faso, the Saudi government. And they also provided meals and iftar banquets. So this is not at all anonymous. Like, you could literally verify it easily if you wanted, but please be very careful, because this creates a certain image about Ibrahim Traoré, which would make him seem very ungrateful and rude and unprofessional if he would do that, you know? Because for someone to be like, oh, you know, thanks for the offer to build free mosques, but I would prefer a different gift, to someone who's also a world leader and who's already giving you a lot, like that would be blatant disrespect, and that doesn't even reflect good on Ibrahim. So whoever says that, you really have to realize, like, first of all, the story is a lie, but another thing that we need to ask ourselves is like, what is the agenda behind it? So myth number 1 is 100% debunked. Don't come at me with these like disrespectful lies. Let's go on to the next myth. And myth number 2 is that Ibrahim Traoré hates Muslims and blames Islam for Burkina Faso's problems. Okay, so let's pause there. So a Muslim president from a country with more Muslims than any other religion, leading a fight to free his nation, and the media wants you to believe that he's against Islam. That's not only dishonest, I thought it was disgusting, because when I made my first video, I said Ibrahim Traoré is a Muslim, and people came for me. Like, I got more than 1,000 comments, and most of them were very negative, and they were like, a lot of people were like, oh, he's fighting Muslim terrorists, or he blames Islam for the instability in Burkina Faso. It's the reason the country is not doing well. And so I just want to set the record straight, because at the Russia-Africa Summit, which took place this year with, I think, 49 countries, 70 country heads, he called out the real threat. And he said, for more than 8 years, we've faced the most violent form of imperialist neocolonialism. And let's make it crystal clear, he did not blame Muslims or Islam. Instead, he said the problem is that African leaders who sing the same songs as the imperialists, calling us malicious and denying our fight for dignity. He's not calling Muslims terrorists. He's calling out corrupt elites and Western puppets who label their own people terrorists to stay in power. And another interview that he did during that summit with the Russian media, he even said, I regret watching Western media because he said it colonizes your brain. And he explained how European media distorts African history and it conditions Africans to forget their past. And I think he's right, because if you believe he's an anti-Muslim, you've already been conditioned by the Western media to hate your own people. And there's a biography I read about Ibrahim Traoré by Robert Schenk, and he never links terrorism to religion. Like Ibrahim never talks like that. What he says is very clear though. He says, something that I really love about him. He says that poverty makes people vulnerable to manipulation. And his solution is not to attack Islam, but to build education, fight poverty, and restore dignity for the people. Because let's be real, if Ibrahim Traoré blamed Muslims, don't you think that the Western media would love him? Don't you think that Western countries would love him? They don't love him because he is a Muslim and he won't bow down, and he knows what really is going on and he speaks out about it all the time. And that's why I'm making this video, to show how media lies and how effective it is when, a hero like Ibrahim is even being diminished because the world wants to make it seem like he is against his own religion and he disrespects fellow Muslim leaders. So that's not a myth number 2. Then we will go to number 3, which is that he's not a Muslim anymore and that he converted. So let me guess, I don't know, you saw a meme or you heard someone confidently claim that he cannot be a Muslim because he's Pan-African. Like I said, I got so many comments and most of them were actually comments like these, like he could not be a Muslim because he's Pan-Africanist. And that was something that I thought was really shocking. People were like, oh, he looks up to Thomas Sankara, so he's a Christian. No, he's an African first, and he never talks about being a Muslim. But when did being African and Muslim belong to opposite sides of the war, Why does he have to abandon his faith in order to be good for the people? Like, I do admit, he does fight for all the people, like he fights for Christians, traditionalists, Muslims, all alike. And that's a true leader, that's someone who supports inclusivity, but that doesn't mean we need to erase his religion. And I also wonder, where does this even come from? It's not just about Ibrahim Traoré. This is a result of decades of anti-Islam propaganda in Africa. And I think this is carefully crafted to pit Muslims and Christians against each other, and also to make Muslims doubt their own, greatness. And that's why I made this video, because I want to show Muslims around the world, like my last video, how they also have powerful role models who don't sell out their faith to lead with strength and dignity. But it's much deeper than these fake lies. Like, these lies, they don't come from nowhere. They've literally been programmed in us through media, through textbooks in school, through everything that we see. There's 3 media lies that you've been programmed to believe about Islam. The first one is that Islam is a violent religion and it does not tolerate others. And I think this is probably the most dangerous lie ever sold to the world, and it's one that the media constantly repeats. But the thing is, if you are someone who follows the truth of Islam, you follow Islam to the letter, you would actually not at all do those things. Muslim extremists, they literally go out of their way to do things that Islam forbids. And the thing is, they're not being more Muslim, they're actually behaving in a way that's not Muslim, because they're actually disobeying the commands of Allah, the basic rules of Allah. So I'm going to explain 3 verses for you. The first one is chapter 49, and there it said that, Allah, God, He created us to get to know one another. Like, that's literally the reason why Allah created all these different people, like to build bridges, like not to burn them. So that already shows like we're not meant to fight with each other. Then there's chapter 6, and there it says, Allah says that we should not insult other religions, because then others will also insult us, and that will only it will only lead to conflict. We need to have dignity and social cohesion. And then there's a 3rd verse, which is in chapter 109, Surah Al-Kafirun, and there it says that I have my way and you have your way, and we don't have to convert. You don't have to convert to my religion. I don't have to convert to your religion. And so the next time when the media screams Muslim extremism, you really have to ask yourself, like, is this Islam, or is this someone doing the exact opposite of Islam. So think about that. Okay, then I want to talk about the second media lie, which is that Muslims only bring destruction in Africa, and that's what they tell other people, right? That they only bring chaos, destruction, violence. But when you believe that, it doesn't just prove that you don't know African history. It shows that you've probably been brainwashed to believe the opposite as well, because there's a lot of African greatness, and you'll find that, some of them, these great African men, were also Muslim. Okay, and then I'm talking about the Libyan lion of the desert. He was Omar al-Mukhtar, and he was a Quran teacher, but also a resistance leader. And he led guerrilla warfare against the Italian regime, fascist regime, for 20 years. He followed Islamic principles. He didn't kill civilians, he didn't loot. And during this genocide that Italy carried out, more than 80,000 people were killed, by the way. They were put also in concentration camps. And, guess what? What's really interesting is that a movie about his life, about the Lion of the Desert, was banned in Italy for 27 years. Why? Because they didn't want a righteous Muslim who won battles against European colonizers without modern weapons. They didn't want him to get the limelight and for people to know, that we Muslims, Africans, have such greatness. So that's the Lion of the Desert. I recommend you definitely watch it. It's actually on YouTube. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is the founder of the Mali Empire, which was one of the richest, most advanced civilizations during that time. And that's Sunjata Keita, and his life matches exactly with the Disney movie Prince the Lion King. And so they were both princes, they were both exiled, and they both came back and reclaimed their history. But guess what? Disney says it's not about the Lion King, it's not about Sunjata Keita, who was actually nicknamed the Lion King. They said no, it was about Hamlet, a European king, a prince who had a crush on his mom. He was abusive, he was an addict, and he never reclaimed his kingdom. And so they don't just try to hide, our history, but they even distort it. They want to make sure that you never look into these things, And so another thing about Sunjata Keita, he comes from the Mali Empire, and the Mali Empire had Sankara University, which was more prestigious than Oxford University. It had more books. Mali Empire had huge trade routes. They had the Monday Charter, which was the predecessor of what UN sort of has tried to do. UN, for example, cannot establish food security, but Mali Empire did have that. And we're told that Muslims destroyed Africa. I'm sorry, but they didn't. They built empires, they defended human rights, they protected diversity, promoted knowledge. I mean, let's be serious. This is what they do. And they erase African Muslim greatness, they steal their brilliance, and then they also gaslight you about, that it's not true. So I just want to tell you, do not fall for these lies. Muslims didn't destroy Africa. They built Africa together with everyone else. So if you're Pan-African, but you're still anti-Muslim, you're actually helping colonizers finish the job. Okay, then I want to tell you about a third lie from the media, and that's that the Muslim world cannot live peacefully with other religions. And I think this is another one of those huge lies where they want you to believe that Islam is incompatible with diversity and that Muslims cannot coexist peacefully with other religions. But, that's not just false. It's also, again, colonizer propaganda. And I mean, I can prove it to you with many examples, but first of all, let's go back to the Quran, and I also encourage you to verify this yourself. Muslims aren't allowed to fight with people just because they believe something different or they are different. Like, we are literally told to live in peace, to show respect, and to say, to you your way and to me mine, So that, first of all, the Quran already says that. But if that's not enough for you, there's a million historical examples as well. I'm going to name a few for you. First, we have India. So in 1913, there was a British historian. He wasn't a Muslim, but he wrote about the religious peace in India. And he said that medieval India offered more religious tolerance than anything seen in Christian Europe at the time. And, guess what? Christian communities still survive in these regions today, like in these Muslim countries. And a second example is Spain, the Al-Andalus Empire, Cordoba Emirate, and research shows that under Muslim rule, the Jews, the Christians, the Berbers, the Slavs, and they all lived together, they traded, they built knowledge together, and Spain was, a golden civilization. And then we also have Mali Empire, of course, the same Mali which I mentioned a million times, but which you probably never learned about in school. And so in Mali, the state religion was Islam, but traditional religions were still respected. And, like I said before, in the Mandate Charter, it's also written down as a human right, to have diversity. It protected the different people, it protected food security, it protected human dignity. And that was centuries before the West even considered it. You have to understand this was the 13th century, okay? And then finally, we have Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, under the Caliph Umar, that was a time where Jews were not being prosecuted. They were being protected. Like even during World War, Jews found refuge and safety under the Ottoman Empire. This has been reported by Jews themselves. History Today did a research on it, or they did an article on it. And they said that Jews also told each other, this is a place where we are respected. And so you might wonder, why is the media telling us all these lies? If Islam is so peaceful, why are Muslims then still in these areas where there's a lot of conflict? And what does it have to do with Ibrahim? Well, when you look at history, you have to look at who they were clashing with. Muslims were not clashing with religions. Muslims were clashing with colonizers. And I can prove it to you. I have more than one example. For example, in British India, the main threat to colonization, this was studied by the Brits, was Muslim resistance, okay? And they found that strictly practicing Muslims were the biggest threat to the British Empire. And so what did they do? They launched campaigns to weaken Islam and to make sure that they could, break down Islam and make Muslims less practicing. Same happened in Indonesia. Practicing Muslims, they triggered a war against Dutch rule in Indonesia, and they saw that the people who followed Islam, who avoided alcohol, gambling, drugs, they were the ones harder to colonize compared to the Muslims who were not practicing so much. And this led to a very famous war called the Padri War, because the devout Muslims, they refused to bow down to their ruler. And, this made also the traditionalist Muslims become more pure because they realized it made them stronger. Okay, then I have another example, which is in Suriname. And there, the slave revolts were often led by Muslims. And I recently found out about it because this is a country my parents are from. And two famous leaders who led the resistance were called Zamzam and Arabi. And they didn't just escape, they fought, they signed peace treaties, and they basically forced the colonizer to respect them. And this is the thing, practicing Muslims, they don't attack others. They resist oppression. And that's why colonizers, they target Islam. And so you might wonder, what does this have to do with Ibrahim? It has everything to do with him. When people say, he's too African to be Muslim, they're repeating the colonizer playbook, the same ones who taught us that being religious makes you weak and being revolutionary makes you dangerous. This is the same script that they told us. Islam supposedly is extremism, religion is weakness, devotion is backwards. Pan-Africanism and Islam, they say it could never go together, but that's a lie, and it's a lie that has been repeated for many generations. And that's why I wanted to make this video. We're not just defending Ibrahim Traoré, but we're all unlearning propaganda. And so I don't want to leave you just here like criticizing everything. I want to leave you with a solution and a way forward because, let's be real. The real problem is misinformation. And this isn't just a Western issue. I mean, it's a global crisis, and as Muslims, we often feel it more than anyone else. You don't even know what to trust anymore. Like you literally feel like when you watch the news, you think, oh, it must be the opposite that's true then, because you just cannot trust anything. That's how it feels. And, when we turn even to Muslim media outlets nowadays or influencers, you hope to get clarity. But even then, you have to be cautious, we notice, because some of these influencers, but also these Muslim outlets, they start strong, they want to speak up for Palestine, call out injustice, defending supposedly the Ummah. But then out of nowhere, they'll start pushing like sectarian division, or they'll start bashing Muslim leaders with no evidence, or promote like propaganda which their own colonized governments have fed them. And so I just want to give you 3 tips, okay, to make sure that you're not sensitive to all these lies. So the first one is obviously be critical of the news. Talk about the double standards. Think about it. Like, how has it ever become normal that we say Islamic terrorism, Muslim violence, Islamism, jihadists? But like, imagine if we did the same thing with others. We would call like child abuse, we would say evangelical child abuse, or Vedic femicide, or Christian corruption. Like, it would never be acceptable. And of course not. I mean, why would we accept something like that when it's not true? And Muslims have the same thing. They shouldn't accept it, We don't have to let the media associate violence with Islam. Okay, so that's number 1. Then number 2, I would like to say, get educated Islamically, because it seems like we've reached times of, fitna, of confusion, of temptation, and we don't know what to believe anymore. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he already told us that this would happen. And so in a hadith, it was said that in the near establishment of the hour, there will be days during which religious knowledge will be taken away and general ignorance will spread. And there will be killing in abundance. And it sounds like that's what's happening right now, right? But the Prophet, peace be upon him, also told us what to do in these situations. And there's another hadith, and it says that if anyone travels a road in search of knowledge, Allah will cause him to travel a road of paradise. The angels will lower their wings in their great pleasure with one who seeks knowledge. The inhabitants of the heavens and the earth and the fish in the deep waters will ask forgiveness for the learned man. MashaAllah, I love that so much. The superiority of the learned man over the devout is like that of the moon on the night when it is full over the rest of the stars. MashaAllah, like that's so beautiful. And this is another Sahih hadith, and I think it's really important, don't just copy things recklessly. Study, learn from authentic scholars, educate yourself before you comment or cancel anyone. Think about how to get knowledge first. And then finally, I have a final advice, and I think it's really important for all of us. Hold your tongue, stay quiet. And this is for me as well. And there's also a Sahih hadith on it that says, there will soon be a time of turmoil where the one sitting is better than the one standing, and the one who stands will be better than the one who walks, and the one who walks will be better than the one who runs. Okay, Sahih Muslim. And this actually means that during times of confusion and propaganda, don't rush to speak. And I think we all are guilty of that sometimes. Sometimes the best response is no response, okay? And then on a final note, I want to say, let's be honest, the world is not scared of Ibrahim Traoré per se because he prays 5 times a day. They're scared because he mixes Islam, anti-colonial leadership, and fearless military position, because let's be honest, like, he's a military leader as well. And, he starts his speeches in the name of Allah, and that terrifies people, just like they were terrified of Malcolm X, just like they were terrified of every Muslim who ever stood up and said, enough is enough. If this video gave you the truth the media will never tell you, then please comment, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what did you learn today that shocked you the most? Muslims, Christians, and Hindus divided were weak, but united we built the greatest nations. It's time to unlearn their lies and reclaim our history, our faith, and our future.